The alien warship Vessex Mercy drifted at the edge of the Ashfall Belt, a wide field of broken rock and old ice that marked the border between three empires. It was here, in this quiet and forgotten place, that Captain Orvin Teal first saw the human ship on his screen. At first he thought it was a mistake. Orvin was a Kolvash, a tall, gray-skinned officer with 3 narrow eyes and a calm, careful voice. He had served in the compact fleet for 30 cycles, and in that time he had learned to trust his instruments completely. So when his sensor officer, a young Kolvash named Miru, told him that a ship had appeared out of nowhere, he did not believe her right away. "Say that again," Orvin said. "A ship, Captain. It just appeared. One moment there was nothing. The next moment there it was." Orvin walked to her station and looked at the screen himself. There, floating silently among the broken rocks, was a long gray shape. It did not look like any ship he had ever seen. It had no wings, no visible engines, no lights. It looked more like a piece of dead metal than a working vessel. "Run a full scan," Orvin said. "Life signs, power signs, weapons, everything." Miru's fingers moved quickly over her controls. The ship's sensors, some of the best in the compact fleet, reached out across the empty space and touched the strange vessel. Nothing came back. "Captain, I'm not reading anything," Miru said, her voice tight. "No life signs, no power signature, no metal composition. It's like the scanner can't even see it, even though we can see it right there with our own eyes." Orvin frowned. "Check the scanner. Maybe it's broken." Miru ran a diagnostic. It came back clean. The scanner was working perfectly. It simply could not read anything from the strange ship in front of them. "Try the deep-range scanner," Orvin said. "And the gravity mapper." Miru tried both. Both failed the same way. The gravity mapper showed the ship had almost no mass, which was impossible for something so large. The deep-range scanner returned only empty static, as if the ship were a hole in space rather than a solid object. By now, other officers on the bridge had noticed. The ship's second officer, a heavy-set Kolvash named Bask, walked over to look at the readings himself. "This is strange," Bask said. "I have never seen a scanner fail like this. Not once in my whole career." "Could it be a ghost ship?" Miru asked. "Something drifting, dead, with old technology that blocks our scans." Orvin shook his head slowly. "Old wrecks still have some kind of signature. Metal, radiation, something. This has nothing. It's like the ship isn't really there at all." He studied the shape on the screen more closely. It was long, smooth, and dark gray, almost black in places. There were no obvious weapons, no obvious engines, nothing that marked it as a warship. But something about its shape made Orvin's neck fur rise slightly, an old instinct he had learned to trust over the years. "Pull up the shape records," he said. "Compare it to every known design in the database." Miru did, and a moment later she looked up, her 3 eyes wide. "Captain, it partly matches an old design, a human design." The bridge went quiet. Humans were not well known in this part of the galaxy. They lived far away, past several borders and old trade routes, in a small pocket of space that most empires simply left alone. There had been a handful of meetings between humans and other species over the years, none of them very friendly, and after a short and strange conflict many cycles ago, most empires had decided it was easier and safer to leave the humans to themselves. They were not seen as a great threat. They were seen as odd, quiet, and best avoided. "That can't be right," Bask said. "Humans don't have ships that can beat our scanners. Their tech isn't that advanced. Everyone knows that." "I'm only telling you what the records show," Miru said. "The hull shape and length roughly match a human design class called, it's hard to translate, something like Silent Line. It was reported once, years ago, but no other data was ever confirmed." Orvin stared at the screen a while longer. The ship did not move. It did not send any signal. It simply floated there, dark and still, like a stone among the other stones of the belt. "Send a standard greeting signal," Orvin ordered. "All channels. Let them know we're here." Miru sent the message. They waited. No answer came back. "Try again, wider band," Orvin said. Still nothing. The silence stretched out for several long minutes. On the bridge, the crew began to whisper among themselves. Some said it must be an empty wreck, drifting since some old accident. Others said it was some kind of trap, left behind for exactly this reason, to lure curious ships close and then strike. Orvin turned to his weapons officer. Ready defensive systems, but do not power weapons. I don't want to look aggressive if there's really nobody on board. But I want to be ready if I'm wrong. Yes, Captain. He turned back to the screen and studied the strange ship a while longer. There was something about its stillness that bothered him more than if it had been moving toward them with weapons blazing. A moving ship, even a hostile one, he understood. This silent, dead-looking thing that refused to be read by any scanner unsettled him in a way he found hard to explain. Captain, Miru said quietly, should I inform the fleet command? Orvin thought about it. Reporting an unknown, unscannable vessel possibly linked to humans would bring attention from higher officers, maybe even from the Compact's Central Council. It could also make him look foolish if it turned out to be nothing more than a broken old wreck with a strange hull material. But his instincts told him this was not nothing. Yes, he said, send a full report, location, description, and note that all scanning attempts have failed. While Miru prepared the report, Orvin kept watching the ship. He noticed something odd about the space directly behind it. The stars there seemed slightly blurred, as if seen through a very thin layer of moving water. He pointed this out to Bask. I see it too, Bask said, squinting at the screen. Could be some kind of energy field around the hull. Or it could be nothing, a trick of the light through the ice dust, Orvin said, though he did not fully believe his own words. He made a decision. We will not fire on it, and we will not leave it unwatched. Bring us to a distance of 2,000 spans, no closer. I want a full visual record kept at all times. If it moves even slightly, I want to know immediately. The ship's pilot brought the Vessex Mercy slowly closer, until the strange vessel filled a good part of the main screen. Up close, they could make out a little more detail. The hull was covered in small ridges and lines, almost like the skin of some sea creature. There were a few dark openings that might have been sensor ports or maybe just decoration. Without proper scans, no one could say for sure. No visible weapons, Bask noted. No visible engines either. How does something like this even move? Maybe it doesn't, Miru offered. Maybe it's dead in space, drifting since whatever happened to it. Then why can't we read it at all? Orvin asked. Dead metal still shows on a scanner. This shows nothing. That is not the behavior of a broken machine. That is the behavior of something built specifically to not be found. The bridge fell quiet again, as the crew considered this. An hour passed, then 2. The strange ship did not move, did not signal, did not react in any way to their presence. Slowly, some of the tension on the bridge began to ease. Officers who had been standing stiffly at their posts began to relax a little, thinking that perhaps this really was just some empty derelict, its strange scanning properties, simply a mystery of its unusual hull material. Orvin did not relax. He kept watching the screen, his 3 eyes narrow, his mind turning the problem over again and again. There was something about the ship's shape, its stillness, its total silence, that felt less like a dead thing and more like something waiting. Captain, Miru said suddenly, breaking the quiet. Command has responded to our report. What do they say? They want us to attempt to make contact, send a shuttle if needed. They are very interested in this discovery. They believe if this is truly human technology capable of defeating our scanners, it could be extremely valuable, or extremely dangerous. They want to know which. Orvin let out a slow breath through his nose. He had feared this order would come, and now that it had, he felt a strange, heavy weight settle into his chest. Prepare a shuttle, he said at last. Small team, Bask, you will lead it. Take Miru for sensor work, and 2 guards. Approach carefully, no weapons drawn, unless there is a clear threat. If it truly is empty, we document everything in return. If it is not. He paused, looking once more at the still, dark shape on the screen. If it is not empty, he said slowly, then be ready to leave the moment I give the order, and do not hesitate. Bask nodded, though his broad face showed clear unease. Understood, Captain. As the shuttle crew prepared to leave, Orvin stayed on the bridge, staring at the silent human ship floating among the broken rocks of the Ashfall Belt. He thought about the old stories he had heard as a young officer, whispered stories about the short, strange conflict with the humans many cycles ago, stories that were rarely spoken of openly because they made no one look good. He thought about how easily every empire had agreed, almost without discussion, to leave the humans alone in their small corner of space. He had always assumed that agreement had been made out of simple lack of interest. Now, watching the shuttle detach from his ship and drift slowly toward that dark, silent hull, he began to wonder if it had been made out of something closer to fear. The shuttle grew smaller on the screen as it crossed the empty distance between the two ships. Orvin watched it go, his hands folded tightly behind his back, his three eyes fixed on the unmoving human vessel that no scanner in his fleet could properly see. Somewhere deep inside that silent hull, though none of the Kolvash crew knew it yet, something had already begun to stir. The shuttle crossed the last stretch of empty space and slowed as it neared the dark hull of the human ship. Bask sat in the pilot seat, his large hands steady on the controls, though his heartbeat had quickened more than he liked to admit. Behind him, Miru checked her handheld scanner again and again, hoping for some new reading. Each time, the little screen showed only empty static. "Still nothing," she muttered. "It's like flying toward a hole in space." "Focus on finding a way in," Bask said. "Command wants answers, not guesses." The two guards, both young Kolvash soldiers named Dreth and Halu, stood near the shuttle's rear hatch, their weapons held ready but pointed downward, following Orvin's orders not to appear hostile unless truly needed. As the shuttle drew close, they could see the human ship's hull in much greater detail than the Vessex Mercy's main screen had shown. Up close, the ridges along the metal looked less decorative and more functional, almost like cooling fins or plates meant to scatter energy rather than reflect it. The dark openings they had guessed might be sensor ports turned out, on closer look, to be sealed hatches, smooth and unmarked except for a few strange symbols near each one. "Human writing," Miru said, zooming her scanner's camera in on the symbols. "I can't read it, but the shapes match old records." "Can you find an opening?" Bask asked. "There," Miru said, pointing to a section of the hull where the plating seemed slightly different, a long seam running down toward what looked like a hatch. "That might be an airlock." Bask guided the shuttle carefully toward the spot, and as they came closer, the seam suddenly split apart on its own, revealing a small docking bay just large enough for their shuttle to fit inside. Everyone on board went still. "It opened by itself," Dreth said quietly. "Nobody signaled it. Nobody touched it." "Maybe it's automatic," Bask said, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "Sensing our approach and reacting, like a simple machine door." "A ship with no power signature doesn't have automatic doors," Miru said. "Automatic doors need power." Nobody had a good answer for that. Bask hesitated for a long moment, hovering the shuttle just outside the opening, before finally making his decision. "We came to investigate," he said. "We investigate, slow and careful." He guided the shuttle into the docking bay. As soon as they were inside, the hatch closed behind them with a soft, heavy sound, sealing them in. A moment later, pale white light filled the bay, and Miru's scanner showed that the space had pressurized with breathable air. "It's letting us in," Halu said, his voice tight. "On purpose. Or it's a trap closing around us," Dreth added. Bask raised a hand for quiet. "Either way, we're here now. Suits stay sealed, weapons stay ready, but lowered. Let's move." The team stepped out of the shuttle into the docking bay. It was a strange, quiet place. Walls made of the same dark gray metal as the outer hull, floor plated with a rough material that muffled their footsteps. There were no visible controls, no visible lights, other than the soft glow coming from strips along the ceiling, and no visible crew. They found a door at the far end of the bay, and it opened for them just as the outer hatch had, sliding aside silently the moment they approached. "After you," Dreth muttered to Bask, only half joking. The hallway beyond was long and dim, lit only by the same soft ceiling strips. The air, according to Miru's scanner, was breathable but slightly cold, colder than any ship the Kolvash normally kept. Their footsteps echoed faintly as they walked, the only sound in the otherwise silent ship. "No crew quarters visible yet," Miru reported, sweeping her scanner along the walls as they moved deeper into the ship. "No sign of life, no sign of recent activity, other than the doors opening for us." "Keep recording everything," Bask said. "Command will want every detail." They passed several sealed doors, each marked with the same strange symbols they had seen outside. Some doors opened as they approached, others stayed firmly shut, no matter how long they waited near them. "Selective," Halu noted, staring at one closed door. "It's letting us see some things and not others." "Or those doors are simply broken," Bask said, though he did not sound convinced by his own words. They came to a large open chamber, clearly some kind of central hub, with several hallways branching off in different directions. In the center of the room stood a raised platform with a strange, dark console built into it, its surface smooth and unmarked except for a few faint lines of light moving slowly across it, like veins carrying a soft glow beneath the surface. "This looks important," Miru said, moving closer to examine it. "Some kind of control station." "Can you tell what it does?" Bask asked. Miru shook her head. "The design is unlike anything in our records. I don't want to touch it without knowing more. Could be helpful. Could be dangerous." Bask nodded, agreeing with her caution. He looked around the wide chamber, at the shadows gathering in the far corners beyond the reach of the soft ceiling lights, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. "This ship feels wrong," he said quietly. "Not dead, waiting." "You feel it too?" Halu asked, relieved that someone had said it out loud. "I do," Bask admitted, "like it's watching us decide what to do next." They continued their search, moving down one of the side hallways, passing more sealed doors and empty rooms. In one chamber, they found rows of what looked like sleeping pods, long clear containers built into the walls, each one empty and dark. "Cryopods," Miru said, running her scanner over them. "Empty, no sign anyone has used them recently, no sign of damage either." "So where is the crew?" Dreth asked. Nobody had an answer. They kept moving, deeper into the silent ship, the hallways growing narrower the further they went. At one point, Halu thought he heard a faint humming sound coming from somewhere below them, but when they stopped to listen, the sound was gone, and no one else had heard it. "Just nerves," Bask said, though he kept his weapon a little closer to his side after that. They reached another large chamber, this one filled with strange equipment along the walls, tall metal frames holding tools and devices that none of them recognized. In the center of the room stood a large table, and on it lay several objects that looked deliberately placed, almost like a display. Miru approached carefully and examined them with her scanner. "These are some kind of small devices, tools maybe, or weapons. I can't tell without proper analysis." "Take samples if you can," Bask said. "Small ones, nothing that would be noticed missing." As Miru reached toward one of the devices, the soft lights along the ceiling flickered once, then steadied again. Everyone froze. "Just a power fluctuation," Bask said quickly, though his voice had gone tight. "This ship clearly has some working systems, even without a scannable power source." Miru withdrew her hand slowly, deciding against touching anything for the moment. "I think we've seen enough for a first visit," she said. "We should report back and let Command decide the next step." Bask agreed. "Let's head back to the shuttle." They turned to retrace their steps, but as they reached the hallway they had come from, they found the door behind them had already closed, seamless and silent, showing no sign it had ever been open at all. "That's not right," Dreth said, his voice rising slightly. "We just came through there." Bask tried the door, pressing his hand against the smooth surface, searching for any kind of control panel. There was none to be found. "Find another way," he ordered, keeping his voice as calm as he could manage. "This ship has more than one path. We'll find our way back." They moved through a different hallway, but this one led them to another sealed door, and then another, each one refusing to open no matter how they searched for a way through. "We're being guided," Miru said quietly, looking around at the narrow, closing paths. "Or trapped." The ceiling lights flickered again, longer this time, the soft white glow dimming almost to darkness before steadying once more. And somewhere, deep within the ship's silent frame, a low hum began to build, faint at first, then slowly growing stronger, a sound none of them had heard when they first came aboard. Basque raised his hand for quiet, listening carefully to the rising hum, feeling it now not just in his ears but faintly through the soles of his boots, a vibration moving through the very metal of the ship. "Command," he said quietly into his communicator, though the words came out steadier than he felt. "We may have a problem." There was no response. He tried again, adjusting the frequency, but the signal would not go through, blocked by something within the ship's thick metal walls. "We're cut off," he told the others. "No contact with the Mercy." The hum grew louder, and for the first time since they had come aboard, the ship itself seemed to shift, ever so slightly, a faint tremor passing through the deck beneath their feet, as though something enormous had just begun, very slowly, to wake up. On the bridge of the Vessex Mercy, Captain Orvin Teal watched the small dot of his shuttle vanish into the side of the human ship. For a long while afterward, nothing happened. The two ships sat together in the quiet dark of the Ashfall Belt, one small and familiar, one large and strange, and Orvin found himself holding his breath without quite meaning to. "Any word from Basque?" he asked. "Nothing yet, Captain," the communications officer replied. "Signal was fine until they entered the hull. Now we have static." Orvin's 3 eyes narrowed. "Static or nothing at all?" "Static, sir. Something is interfering but not fully blocking." That was not much comfort. Orvin folded his hands behind his back and waited, watching the human ship on the main screen, still dark, still silent, still refusing to show anything on any scanner they pointed at it. An hour passed in that heavy silence. Then, without warning, the ceiling lights of the human vessel, faint before, grew suddenly brighter, visible even from the Mercy's bridge as thin lines of pale light along the length of the hull. "Captain, the target is showing external light activity," Miru's replacement at the sensor station reported, a younger officer named Petch. "First visible change since we arrived." "Still no scan readings?" Orvin asked. "None, sir. It's like the ship simply doesn't want to be measured, no matter what it's doing." Orvin stepped closer to the screen, watching the thin lines of light grow brighter still. Somewhere inside that ship, his people were walking through dark hallways, and now, for reasons he did not understand, that ship was waking up around them. "Try contacting the shuttle again," he ordered. "Trying now, sir." No response. "Signal's getting weaker, not stronger." Orvin felt the old instinct rising in his chest again, the same uneasy feeling he had felt from the very first moment he saw this strange vessel on his screen. He had hoped it was nothing. He had hoped his caution was simply an old officer's habit, seeing danger in shadows that held none. Now, watching those lights grow brighter along that silent hull, he no longer believed that. "Bring the Mercy to full alert," he said. "Weapons to standby. Shields up. I want every system ready, but I do not want to fire first unless we are fired upon or our people are in clear danger." The bridge crew moved quickly to follow his orders, the calm quiet of before, replaced now with the focused tension of a crew preparing for the unknown. Inside the human ship, Basque and his team stood together in the narrow hallway, listening to the low hum that had grown steadily louder around them. The tremor beneath their boots had grown stronger too, a slow, steady vibration that reminded Basque uncomfortably of a great engine beginning to turn. "This ship is powering up," Miru said, staring at her scanner, which for the first time since they had come aboard was showing something, though the readings made no sense. Numbers flickered and changed too fast to properly read, as if the ship's systems were far beyond what her device was built to measure. "Powering up from what?" Dreth asked. "We were told there was no power signature at all." "Maybe there never was a lack of power," Basque said slowly, a cold understanding settling over him. "Maybe there was only a very, very good way of hiding it." The lights along the hallway grew brighter, no longer the soft, dim glow from before, but a clean, steady white light that made the dark metal walls seem almost welcoming, in a strange way, as though the ship itself had simply been asleep and was now beginning to stir. A new sound joined the hum, a soft series of clicks and shifts coming from somewhere deep within the walls, like countless small parts moving into place after a long stillness. "We need to find a way out," Bask said. "Now." They tried the sealed doors again, and this time, to everyone's surprise, one of them slid open at their approach, revealing a hallway they had not explored before. "Progress," Halu said, relief clear in his voice. "Don't celebrate yet," Bask warned. "We don't know if it's leading us out or leading us somewhere else." They moved quickly down the new hallway, following its gentle curve, the hum growing steadily louder around them, until they came to a wide window built into the wall, looking out into what seemed to be a massive open chamber within the ship's interior. Miru stopped, staring through the window, and let out a soft, startled sound. "Look," she said. The others gathered beside her, and what they saw made even Bask's steady hands tighten around his weapon. Below them, in the wide chamber, stood rows upon rows of tall, silent machines, humanoid in shape but clearly not alive, their smooth gray surfaces catching the new light with a dull gleam. Hundreds of them, standing perfectly still in ordered rows, like an army waiting for a command that had not yet come. "What are those?" Dreth whispered. "I don't know," Bask said, "and I don't want to wait around to find out." As if in answer to his words, far below in that great chamber, one of the machine's heads slowly turned, its faint optical sensors catching a glint of light, and though it made no other movement, Bask felt certain, with a deep and sudden fear, that it had somehow sensed them watching. "Move," he said, "now." They ran, no longer worried about appearing calm or unthreatening, moving quickly back the way they had come, the hallways around them lit brighter with every passing second, the low hum rising into a steady, powerful thrum that seemed to fill the entire ship. "There," Miru called, spotting a familiar junction. "The docking bay is this way." They rounded the corner and found, to their great relief, that the door to the docking bay stood open, their shuttle waiting exactly where they had left it. They rushed inside, sealing the hatch behind them, and Bask wasted no time getting into the pilot's seat. "Hold on," he said, and the shuttle lifted off the deck, just as the outer hatch of the docking bay slid open once more, revealing the dark, star-filled space outside. They flew out of the human ship and back toward the Mercy as quickly as the small shuttle could manage, and behind them, the great dark vessel continued to grow brighter, its hum now audible even through open space, carried faintly on whatever strange energy field surrounded its hull. On the Mercy's bridge, Orvin watched the shuttle streak back toward them and let out a breath of relief he had not realized he was holding. "Get them aboard immediately," he ordered, "and keep every sensor locked on that ship." The shuttle docked quickly, and Bask led his team straight to the bridge, still breathing hard from the tension of their escape. "Report," Orvin said. "The ship is not empty, Captain," Bask said. "It's full of some kind of machine, hundreds of them, standing in rows like soldiers, and it's waking up. Power, lights, sound, movement, all of it, coming from nowhere our scanners can find." Orvin's gray face grew grim as he listened. "Did you make contact with any crew? Any living beings?" "None, sir. No humans. Just empty cryopods and those machines." Before Orvin could respond, Petch's voice cut in sharply from the sensor station. "Captain, the target is moving." Every head on the bridge turned to the main screen. There, the great dark ship, which had sat perfectly still since the moment they arrived, was now sliding slowly forward through the rocks of the ashfall belt, its long hull cutting smoothly through the drifting debris without so much as a scrape. "No visible engine flare," Petch reported, his voice rising with disbelief. "No thruster signature. It's just moving, like it's being pulled by something we can't see." Orvin stared at the screen, watching the ship gain speed, gliding silently through the belt with a grace that seemed almost unnatural for something so large. "All stations, brace for possible engagement," he said, his voice steady despite the fear building in his chest. "Raise shields to maximum. Prepare to retreat to a safe distance if needed, but hold position for now. I want to know what this ship intends to do before we run from it." The great human vessel continued forward, gaining speed with every passing moment, its hull now glowing faintly along countless thin lines of light, like a creature finally shaking off a long, deep sleep. And on the bridge of the Vessex Mercy, Captain Orvin Teal watched it come, his mind racing to understand what kind of ship, what kind of people, could build something capable of hiding so completely, only to wake so powerfully, right in front of their eyes. The human ship moved through the ashfall belt with a smoothness that made no sense to anyone watching from the Vesic's Mercy. It did not push through the drifting rocks and ice. It simply passed between them, as if it had already known, long before arriving, exactly where every piece of debris would be. "Distance closing," Petch reported, his voice tight. "Still no weapons signature, no engine flare, nothing our systems can properly read. It's just coming closer." "Hold position," Orvin ordered, though every instinct in his body told him to turn and run. If they wanted us destroyed, I believe they would have done it already. "Let's see what they actually want." Bask, still catching his breath from the escape, moved to stand near the captain. "Sir, what we saw in there, those machines, if that ship decides to unleash them, we won't stand much of a chance." "I'm aware," Orvin said quietly, "which is exactly why I want to understand this before we act rashly." The human ship slowed as it came within 1,000 spans of the Mercy, and then it stopped entirely, hanging in space, glowing faintly, its presence now undeniable to every sensor that had failed to find it just hours before. "Captain," the communications officer said suddenly, sitting up straight at her station. "We're receiving a signal. Direct hail, on an open channel." Orvin felt his hearts quicken. "Put it through." A moment later, a voice filled the bridge, calm and level, speaking through what was clearly a translation device, the words coming out smooth and even, without anger, without threat. "Kolvash vessel Vesic's Mercy. This is Commander Elena Osei, of the Human Research and Defense Vessel, Quiet Word. We are aware that a boarding team from your ship entered our vessel without invitation. We have chosen not to consider this a hostile act, given your caution, and the fact that your team caused no damage and took nothing of importance. We would like to speak, if you are willing." The bridge fell into stunned silence. Orvin exchanged a look with Bask, both of them clearly surprised by the calm, almost polite tone of the message, so different from what they had expected after seeing rows of silent war machines standing ready in the ship's belly. Orvin cleared his throat and stepped forward. "This is Captain Orvin Teal, of the Vesic's Mercy. We meant no harm by boarding your vessel. We believed it to be an empty wreck, given that our scanners could detect nothing aboard it at all. We are willing to speak." There was a short pause before the voice returned. "Understood, Captain. I imagine our ship's design caused quite a bit of confusion. We would be glad to explain, if you are interested." "I am very interested," Orvin said honestly. A new video feed opened on the main screen, showing a woman standing on what looked like a simple, functional bridge, far less elaborate than the row upon row of sleeping machines Bask had described. She had dark hair pulled back neatly, sharp brown eyes, and a calm, steady expression that gave away very little. "Captain Teal," she said, "let me first apologize for the alarm. My ship must have caused your boarding team. The Quiet Word is a research and testing vessel. We are trying out a new kind of hull technology, something we call full-spectrum dampening. In simple terms, it prevents nearly every kind of scanner from reading anything useful about the ship, its power levels, its mass, even its presence, unless you already know exactly where to look and how." "That would explain a great deal," Orvin said carefully, "but it does not explain the machines my officer saw standing in your lower decks." Elena nodded, unsurprised by the question. "Those are maintenance and defense units, kept in standby mode while the dampening field is active. They do not activate unless the ship's automatic systems detect a serious threat, or unless a crew member wakes them directly. Your team was never in real danger from them. I understand, however, that seeing them standing there in the dark must have been unsettling." "That is one way to put it," Bask muttered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Orvin studied the calm woman on the screen carefully. Why test such technology out here, so close to a compact border? It has caused a great deal of alarm, and could easily have led to a serious conflict. Elena's expression grew slightly more serious. "That is a fair question, Captain, and I will give you an honest answer. We chose this region specifically because it is quiet, far from major shipping lanes, and rarely visited. We did not expect a compact patrol ship this far into the belt. Your arrival was Frankly, a surprise to us as well. Our ship went fully silent the moment we detected you approaching, exactly as it was designed to do. We were simply waiting to see if you would notice us at all, before choosing whether to reveal ourselves. And if we had not noticed you? Orvin asked. Then we would have quietly moved on, and you would have continued your patrol none the wiser, Elena said simply. Our intention here was never to provoke anyone. It was only to test whether our new technology could hide us completely from an active compact patrol ship, using your own systems as an honest, real test, rather than a simulation. Orvin absorbed this for a moment. It was, in its own strange way, a reasonable explanation, though it did little to calm the deeper unease that had settled in his chest since first spotting the ship. Your technology succeeded completely, he admitted. Every scanner on my ship failed to read anything useful about your vessel, right up until you chose to reveal yourselves. That is, deeply impressive and deeply concerning, depending on how such technology might be used. I understand the concern, Elena said. I would feel the same in your position. I can tell you honestly that the quiet word carries no weapons capable of striking first without significant warning, and our standing orders are strictly defensive. We are not here looking for a fight, Captain. We are here to test whether we could avoid one entirely, simply by not being found. Bask leaned toward Orvin and spoke quietly. Captain, if this is true, and their ships can hide this completely from every scanner we have, that changes everything about how we should think of human capability. Orvin gave a small, grim nod, his mind already working through the same troubling thought. If a simple research and testing vessel could achieve something this advanced, what might their true warships be capable of? The old stories of the short, strange conflict between humans and other species suddenly felt far less distant and far less exaggerated than he had always assumed. Commander Osei, Orvin said carefully, I would like to request a proper diplomatic exchange between our two peoples regarding this technology, not as a threat, but as a matter that concerns the safety and understanding of every ship that travels through this region. Elena considered this for a moment, then gave a small, measured nod. I can arrange for a formal report to be sent to your compact council, along with a message from our own government. I cannot promise how much detail will be shared about the technology itself, you understand, but the fact of its existence, and our reasons for testing it, can certainly be explained clearly. That would be appreciated, Orvin said. There was a brief pause, and then Elena's expression softened slightly, something almost like sympathy crossing her calm features. Captain, I understand your officers went through quite a frightening experience aboard our ship. I would like to formally apologize to them, and to you, for the confusion and fear this incident caused. It was never our intention to frighten anyone. Orvin glanced at Bask, who gave a short nod, some of the tension finally easing from his broad shoulders. Apology accepted, Commander, Orvin said, though I hope you understand why my crew, and likely my superiors, will want a great deal more information about exactly what your people are capable of building. Elena's mouth curved into the faintest hint of a smile. That is a very fair thing to want, Captain. I imagine it is the same thing my own superiors will want to know about your fleet, now that we have had this rather unusual meeting. The two ships remained still in the quiet dark of the Ashfall Belt, facing each other across the short distance. No longer strangers hiding behind failed scanners and silent hulls, but two crews now cautiously, carefully, beginning to understand just how much they still did not know about one another. In the days that followed, the Vessex Mercy and the Quiet Word remained together in the quiet stretch of the Ashfall Belt, exchanging careful messages back and forth between their two governments. Captain Orvin Teal sent his full report to the Compact Council, describing everything his crew had witnessed: the failed scans, the silent boarding, the rows of sleeping machines, and the calm, measured explanation given by Commander Elena Osei. The response from the council came slower than Orvin expected, and when it finally arrived, it was longer and more serious than any message he had received in his 30 cycles of service. The council did not order him to attack, nor did they order him to retreat. Instead, they instructed him to continue peaceful contact, to gather as much information as the humans were willing to share, and to treat the encounter with the highest level of caution and respect. Orvin read the message twice, then looked up at Bask, who stood beside him on the bridge. "They're worried," he said simply. "As they should be," Bask replied. Aboard the Quiet Word, Commander Elena Osei received similar instructions from her own government. She was to continue open communication with the Kolvash Compact, share a reasonable, limited amount of information about the dampening technology's existence without giving away its exact workings, and use the encounter as an opportunity to build a small bridge of trust between two peoples who had, until now, mostly kept a careful, silent distance from one another. Elena called Orvan once more for a longer conversation, and this time, she invited him to bring a small team aboard the Quiet Word properly, with a full introduction and a guided tour, rather than the frightening, unplanned exploration his officers had first experienced. Orvan agreed, though he made sure Bask and Miru joined him this time, both of them curious despite their earlier fear, wanting to understand better the ship that had so completely fooled every instrument they had. When they arrived aboard the Quiet Word this time, the ship felt entirely different. The hallways, though still dim by Kolvash standards, were lit steadily now, and human crew members moved about calmly, nodding politely as the small Kolvash group passed by. The rows of standing machines, which had seemed so frightening in the dark, now stood quietly powered down in a clearly marked storage bay, looking far less like waiting soldiers and more like simple maintenance tools once properly explained. These units handle repairs, cargo movement, and emergency defense if truly needed, Elena explained, walking beside Orvan through the bay. They are not meant to frighten anyone. In the dark, without proper lighting, I understand how they might have seemed otherwise. They seemed like an army waiting for orders, Bask admitted. Elena gave a small, understanding smile. I can see how that impression would form. I promise you, Officer Bask, if we had wished to fight, we would not have needed to hide an entire ship to do it. They continued the tour, and Elena answered what questions she could, careful never to reveal the deeper details of how the dampening field truly worked, but open enough about its general purpose and existence, that Orvan began to feel, slowly, that this was not a hostile people looking for a fight, but a careful, quiet people, who valued not being found far more than they valued being feared. "Why value hiding so strongly?" Orvan asked at one point, as they walked through a long, quiet hallway near the ship's center. Elena considered the question carefully before answering. "Humanity learned a long time ago, Captain, that being seen as weak invites trouble, and being seen as too strong invites fear and conflict. We have found that being simply unseen, when we choose to be, gives us room to observe, to understand, and to avoid unnecessary fights altogether. It is not about hiding out of weakness. It is about choosing when and how we wish to be known." Orvan thought about this for a long while, as they continued walking. It was a philosophy quite different from his own people's approach, which valued clear strength and open presence above nearly everything else. Yet he could not deny a certain wisdom in Elena's words, a quiet, careful confidence that reminded him less of a threat and more of a very patient, very capable people who preferred not to reveal their full hand unless truly necessary. By the end of the visit, a small agreement had begun to form between the two crews, nothing official, nothing binding beyond their own two ships, but a simple understanding that further contact between their peoples would continue, carefully and respectfully, through proper diplomatic channels, rather than fear and confusion. As Orvan and his team prepared to return to the Vessex Mercy, Elena walked with them to the docking bay, the same bay that had once frightened Bask and his team so deeply during their first frightened visit. "Captain Teal," she said, before they boarded their shuttle, "I hope this meeting, strange as its beginning was, proves to be a good thing for both our peoples." "As do I, Commander," Orvan replied honestly, "though I admit, your ship gave my crew quite a fright." Elena's mouth curved into a small, genuine smile. "For what it's worth, Captain, that wasn't even a large ship, or a truly powerful one by our standards. It was simply a quiet one. I imagine that thought alone will keep your council thinking carefully for a good while yet." Orvan gave a slow nod, understanding the quiet, careful weight behind her words. If a simple research vessel could so completely defeat every scanner his advanced fleet possessed, the true extent of human capability, hidden away in their own quiet corner of the galaxy, remained a mystery that no one outside humanity truly understood. As the shuttle carried them back toward the Mercy, Basque looked out the small window at the dark, silent shape of the quiet word behind them, its hull once again beginning to fade from clear sight, as its dampening field slowly reactivated, the ship disappearing not through movement, but simply through the quiet, careful choice not to be seen. "Captain," Basque said quietly, "do you think other empires know about this, about what humans are truly capable of?" Orvin considered the question for a long moment before answering. "I think," he said slowly, "that very few do, and I believe humanity prefers it that way." Back aboard the Vessex Mercy, Orvin filed his final report to the Compact Council, carefully detailing everything he had learned, the technology's existence, the calm and careful nature of the human crew, and his own honest assessment that humanity, though currently quiet and distant, possessed capabilities that deserved far more respect and caution than most empires currently gave them. He ended his report with a simple line, one that would later be quoted many times among Compact officers who studied this strange and quiet first encounter. "We came looking for a dead ship drifting among the rocks. We found, instead, a living lesson in patience, caution, and the quiet strength of a people who choose carefully when, and to whom, they reveal themselves." As the Vessex Mercy turned away from the ashfall belt and set course back toward compact space, Orvin took one last look at the empty patch of darkness, where the quiet word had disappeared completely from sight once more, its presence, its power, and its true capabilities folded away, quiet and patient, waiting for whatever reason might someday cause it to reveal itself again. And far away in the depths of human space, word of this quiet, careful first contact began to spread among those few who needed to know it. A small reminder passed carefully between officers and officials that though humanity often chose to remain quiet, unseen, and unremarkable to the wider galaxy, that quiet was a choice, and never a weakness, and any empire that mistook the two would learn, sooner or later, exactly how costly that mistake could be.